What is a hero? A mythological figure, often of divine descent, endowed with great strength or ability? An illustrious warrior? No. It's a person admired for achievements and noble qualities, one who shows great courage. Welcome to the What's a Hero podcast, where we dive deep into what a hero is and what makes them that hero. I'm your host, Ken Frownfelter, and I'm going to be introducing you to some of the world's most likely and unlikely heroes. You may have never heard of them before, and they most likely have never met you. But they all have one thing in common. They are ready to do whatever it takes to help make you better, even if it means sacrificing everything for you. Let's get into it. This is episode 41 of the What's a Hero podcast with me, Ken Frownfelter. Now, back in the early 80s, or I guess maybe even mid 80s, there was, in the police world, there was one hero who stepped out in front of everybody to make sure that everybody was safe in a way that he saw was safe. So whether he was being ever vigilant in his MOP, his mobile observation platform, or he was taking a rookie under his wing to make sure that they were able to do a crime scene, investigate a crime scene in a way that was the right way, the way that this person did it, or they were going to the police academy to help train the new guys and had to get up at 5:30 in the morning to make sure that they were okay, or they were seeing a drunk guy and arresting the drunk guy, otherwise known as seeing drunk guy, arresting same. This guy was ever vigilant in being the police officer who was known as a hero. He was the epitome of it. And the person I'm talking about is Buck Savage. And if you're not familiar with Buck Savage, you just go online, just Google Buck Savage. Who is Buck Savage? And this guy, he's got a long history. He's got tons of YouTube videos out there. But there's a real side to who Buck Savage is, and that guy was the person who was Buck Savage. And as much as he was tongue in cheek, he was a real police officer. He was a real hero who did things for others and put himself out there for other people. And today on the show, we are, I guess, lucky enough. We are blessed enough. We are honored to have the actual JD Buck Savage on the show, but otherwise known as Dave Smith. So welcome, Dave. How are you, sir?
Well, great, man. What a great intro. Holy smoke, man. Now I gotta live up to it. Holy man. I tell you.
It's fun, man. You got to think about it. You know, you, as Buck Savage, you put out these things, but there's a real person behind who this guy is and where all these little stories came from and where these lessons came from, because it's not like that's who you really were, but you have a storied past that you have things to draw on. You have this whole legacy that you left behind in Arizona as to who you are and who the real Dave Smith is. And I think that's something a lot of people don't really know unless they know you personally.
Right. Yeah. Mine is a very odd career because it's a novel. I don't follow any traditional law enforcement path. I graduated from the University of Arizona, started the Tucson Police Department. I went through, all the usual adventures there as a young officer. And then I just felt like the Highway Patrol offered me a chance to do things different. So I ended up on the Navajo reservation as a highway patrolman, which is a completely different context. You're in the city environment, you have a different kind of crises, different stressor, and you always have backup. You don't have on the Navajo res, that's it's as big as Maryland. You don't the 110,000 population spread across this massive area. So I had to be commissioned as a federal officer for the BIA and the tribal DPS. So it was a great adventure. And then in 1980, I went down to the academy in Phoenix there as the survival and fitness guy in training. And that was when it really got fun, because then I was not only teaching and going around doing fitness programs and safety programs, in 1980, that was real embryonic. Today's training is so much better. I mean, you guys are quantum leaps ahead of what we were trained in the 70s. And I've seen these things come, and I was so tickled. Like I played with early prototypes of the FATs. In fact, the very first FATs, I was given evaluations of Jody Schechter and, down there in Georgia when he was developing it. When simunition was being developed, I brought the inventor over to a training program we're doing in Halifax, and got shot by the early prototypes where they often wouldn't explode, which put all the energy in your skin. That was a great adventure. But
yeah,
so I've been doing this a long time. And the one thing that really got me off the springboard, I guess, was in 1980, we were sitting around training, and we were complaining about the police training quarterly. I hated it when I was a Tucson cop. It had to be watched. You had to sign off on it. It was the Post's quarterly training update.
Mm-hmm.
And it was talking heads. I said, can't we do a safety tip? Can't we do something humorous to keep the crime fighters transfixed, And
right.
that's where Buck Savage. Yeah. That was 1980. The very first one, of course, being a bureaucracy, the first thing the state said was, heck no, no room for humor in training. And I said, can't we just do it? So we got a new chief in from Phoenix PD. Tom Milstead came in, and he kind of supported me. And then Arizona Post said, yeah, let's do it. So first Buck Savage ever was back in 1980. So
wow.
I did them for 3 years. Yeah.
That's cool, because you don't realize where that might go, or who that might even who that might touch years down the line, and that was, you said 1980, and it's 2021 now, and we're looking at 40 years of these things being out there, and people still talk about it. You can say, hey, have you ever heard of Buck Savage, to the younger guys in the police department, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I've heard that name before. They've been shown a video or something in the academy or somewhere, and it's cool that way. And so, but where did this all come from? So who was little Dave? Who was this little guy that ran around, that ultimately became a police officer? But who was he to start out with back when he was curtain climber?
Well, I got to say, I always had dreams of being a fighter pilot growing up. That was my dream. So I, started flying very young, worked at the airport there in Flagstaff Air, a big, gateway to the Grand Canyon, 7,000 feet up, snow, cold. Loved it. Grew up there. Went to the Naval Academy. Got injured right away wrestling at Navy. That's 4F. So I ended up at the University of Arizona and trying to pick, because if you lose one dream, pick another. Go. Your life's an adventure. Keep going. Whatever gets blocked. That there's a great book, The Obstacle is the Way, and I really agree with his philosophy. Too many people see the obstacle and they think, I can't get around it. Well, go through it. Okay, I can't be a fighter pilot, but I can be a cop on another adventure. I was fighting fires through college up on the Coconino. Mm-hmm. And my last year fighting fires, I got sent to the law enforcement school, and I had a ball out there driving around in my patrol truck. And I said, that's it. So I applied for Oakland PD, Las Vegas, and Tucson, got hired by Tucson. So I graduated on December, and January 4th, I was hired by Tucson. It was just, wow. I was unemployed. I was unemployed essentially 2 weeks, and that was it. Then that threw me in that great adventure,
So did you ever have thoughts of being a police officer, or were you just transfixed on being a fighter pilot or being a pilot?
Yeah, that was my whole dream. I got to be honest. That was, that totally transfixed. Remember, let's go back to the 1960s, late 60s there. The Vietnam War is going on. Mm-hmm. Everybody graduating ahead of me are going off to Vietnam, and all my heroes, in essence, are off in Vietnam. And you got this war. The Naval Academy guaranteed you, if you graduated, aviation was guaranteed. So I was like, holy smoke, fantastic, right?
Wow. Yeah.
Well, of course, this is the kind of thing you're just like, dang, okay, what do I do now? So I came back. I was rehabilitated. The problem was when they brought me in, I was, starting linebacker for the 6th Battalion, and they bring me in, and the guy goes, you're 4F. And it's just like, what? He goes, Mr. Smith, you're 4F. And you're like, because you're in cognitive dissonance. You're like, wait, no, you got to be kidding me, man. I'm rehabbed all the way back. the guy who rebuilt my knee at the Naval Academy was the guy that done Gail Sayers surgery, Dr. John Bergfield. So, I mean, there's these guys, I had all this great rehab, I was in great shape. So I came back, started fighting fires, because the Forest Service, they didn't require a medical like that, and I started fighting fires, went to college, started, and that was it. So then I started thinking, and I will say this, my generation, that late 60s, early 70s group, there are so many cops in Arizona that were in that group. It was just odd. It's crazy. My best friends growing up is the longest serving United States Marshal now, Dave Gonzalez, for Arizona. I mean, all these people I grew up with were going into law enforcement while I was still in college. And they all kept telling me, look, Dave, this is a great thing. But I was still torn. I was pre-law. I was thinking about law school. And then it just, that last summer fighting fires up there, driving in that patrol truck, I had a 100-gallon tank in the back, a Berkeley pump, and a ticket book. It was just great, and I thought, man, this is a great adventure. And I did go out in a couple ride-alongs with one of my best friends. Also had become a Flagstaff cop. And I was like, all right, that's it. So I came back for my senior year, applied, or I was going to graduate mid-year, put in his application. Tucson was in the fastest growing city in the United States at that time. And they were growing like mad. And so bang, there I was. And I couldn't have been a greater adventure. I got to say this, I just saw, the 3.5 years with Tucson, I was with fantastic people and having great adventure. But for me, I kept thinking, I need to think about this. I worked with I was working on a special investigation with DPS guys on the stolen truck ring. They're out of Mexico, and we were working on trying to take them down. And I just got to work. They just had better equipment. They had all this stuff. And I thought, boy, and they got this and they got that. And then they would all tell stories. I said, well, heck, I applied for, and again, at that time, my one of my very best friends, like I said, Dave Gonzalez, U.S. Marshal, he was DPS at that time. And he retires as a captain and goes on to become the United States Marshal, and has stayed there ever since. But we sat around and we talked about it, and I put in, and there it was. That's what got me going. And again, I never looked back, because after I did the Buck Savages, they got distributed nationally. And the next thing I know, I'm doing street survival seminars for Caliber Press in 1983.
Wow.
This is the stuff that, my director came in and said, look, go ahead if you need a leave of absence, whatever you need. I just want that promotion. I want the promotional material to say DPS. I want, Milstead just wanted to get as much grade at the top video unit in the United States at that time, under a guy named Gary Josephson. He did everything. Milstead was into promoting the agency, and he believed in it. And it's just fortuitous.
Right.
It's insane.
That's cool. You don't think about that. Now there's so much competition. Everybody's got a video camera now, and everybody's doing all that different stuff. But you said, so in the 70s, you're doing police work until you get into the 80s, where they start saying, okay, we're going to do something for training and for promotional and blah, blah, blah. What, as far as in the 70s and during that time when you were, I guess, developing your policemanship, is that the correct word?
Yeah. Well, you can invent it. You just invented it.
Sure. But you're developing that, and you go through all the different stuff as far as field training and all that stuff. Did you have dreams of doing more, or were you right there just doing the job and making sure that you can be a good police officer?
Well, yeah, that's the whole thing. You want to be, anybody listening to this who's a cop knows, look, your first priority is becoming a good cop if you really give a damn, and also if you want to stay alive. Tucson, we were a top crime city in the United States at that time. Back in those days, you didn't FTO like you do today. There was no 13-week program. In our academy back then, every 4 weeks, it was a 16-week academy with 4 interspersed training weeks. So you had 20-week academy where 4 weeks in the academy, a week on the street in a brown uniform and a wooden baton, and your badge said trainee on it. And it was just first cop I rode along with had been a Kansas City cop. And he was hard and crusty and then fantastic cop. And I spent that week amazed at his observational skills, at his attitude, how he could de-escalate a situation in an instant. It's so funny because his son just retired now, and was one of my cadets in the academy. That's just how the small world, just a great guy.
Right.
And, these are the things, we didn't know. We had revolvers and 6 shots and dump pouches, no portables in those days. It was a different world. And that was the thing, you had to train yourself. When you graduated, you went to a squad called a Tango Squad that had 1 veteran officer, and that was it. And you were they observed you, and then you were on your own as a squad. And we led the city in felony arrests. We had this gung-ho squad. We got a guy who's still, again, one of my best friends today. He's been the chief of Springfield, Illinois, and the chief of Evanston, Wyoming, and Sahuarita, Arizona, and Yankton, South Dakota. He just went on. He had a tremendous career, but he was one of these guys, man. He was our senior officer. He graduated the academy ahead of us, had been an Army guy. I mean, he had all this stuff that he taught us, and then we learned and learned. And that was all embryonic then. See, all the stuff that you guys get now didn't exist. Building search techniques, all this, everybody was still evaluating. We were learning from the Israelis, how to go house to house after their conflict down there, and they lost so many soldiers in the house to house battle. So they developed the slicing the pie, quick peeking, all this. Well, we Americans stole it completely, upgraded it, and these are the kind of things that today, like I said, I was shot with original simunition pellets. I was at the original when FATS was coming out. When Taser was just a hand, or the original stun gun was just a handheld thing. We used to demonstrate that in the 80s. Now you've got advancements in tasers. You got simunition. You got everything, you guys, and not just that. Your tactics, you got books and books on building searches, traffic stops, and look at all the defensive tactics skills out there.
Yeah.
Ours was kind of like, hey, were you ever in a street fight? Cool. It'll probably pay off. That was kind of
right.
How
Yeah.
it was, man.
Yeah. We had a guy, and this was, I don't know, 5-6 years ago. And he was brand new, and I don't know, maybe it was probably more closer to 10 years. But anyways, the question was to him, hey, you ever been in a fight before? And he said, no, never been in a fight, not on the schoolyard, not anywhere. And so the first opportunity, he's on field training, and there's this guy that's mouthing off, getting ready to fight some officers, and they call him up. Hey, bring up your rookie up here. So they get him up there, and they're like, you're going to try to de-escalate this, go. And it's an active scene right now. This guy's throwing a fit and being a nuisance or whatever. Oh, okay. So they get him in there, and sure enough, and they knew this guy was going to try to fight, because that's what he always did. He's just one of the guys that does that. And sure enough, he was able to get into his first fight, and they made sure it happened, because they had it, they weren't just letting him go at it, like Lethal Weapon, where everybody's standing around watching these two duke it out. But they wanted to see his engagement. They wanted to see him. Is he going to engage? Is he going to get into it? Is he going to do stuff, instead of sitting back and and trying to figure out what's the best way to do this, and blah, blah, blah. So, but that's the idea, is there's a lot of people who never been in fights, and they think that, I'm going to be a police officer, and it's going to be this way or that, or it's going to be high school wrestling, or it's going to be something easy. And it's a totally different world. It's ridiculously dangerous. And I don't think a lot of people realize that, because we don't know what people are doing.
You hit it right on the head. In fact, as a wrestler and a guy that did judo, when you're on the street in a fight, it's a whole different. There are no rules. That they're the chaos. I've been watching the Kim Potter trial from the Minneapolis suburb there, where she drew her taser or went to draw her taser, drew her firearms. And of course, I've been studying, because I wanted to be a pilot so bad. I've been studying human error all my adult life. When I was a little kid, I would take my dad's AOPA, or Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association magazine, and his flying magazine, and read them in school, and one of the most intense things you read in flying magazine and the AOPA are the accident evaluations, cause, and almost every one of them ends with decision, pilot error. What caused the wreck? Pilot error.
Right.
Then again, these are people who make life and death mistakes just by doing exactly the things that Kim Potter did. And so I was watching that. I'm like, dang, I've always been evaluating that. And I think that's just something that what's happening here. Oh, I forgot to put that on silent.
That's okay.
I know, right?
No problem.
All right. Sorry.
So,
all right.
No, that's all right. So you're saying that just based off human error is what gets us, that's the majority of the time what's going to mess things up is human error, not necessarily technological mess ups or whatever the case is.
Well, it's so often human error is a critical element. One of the hardest parts as a trainer, and this is especially when officers are young, is having the right mindset, because as we were talking about a minute ago, if you've ever just been in a wrestling match, or if you boxed, I don't care what your combat sport is, number one, you're going to be far ahead of those kids that never played sports. You're just going to be vastly ahead. Secondly, though, you're shocked by the immediate escalation of violence and the chaos.
Right.
And that's one of the things I was, that I think you guys nowadays, we do much more contextual training, much more, those kind of things that help us, and that's what's so important.
Right. Yeah. And it's not something that we necessarily think about, and we just think, oh, they got a new training thing coming out, or they want us to do this now or whatever. And it's all part of the growth and the progress that we don't think about as we're developing something for the next generation or for the next guys. We're just thinking, great, now I have something else I've got to try to remember or whatever, or put off a previous thing that I learned and I have to learn this thing now. But that was something that you guys were doing probably over and over and over again with just the advancement of things, especially because the 80s had such a leap in technological advances. And then the 90s obviously came, but it was a total different world. And like you said, you had dump pouches, which are, for those that are listening, you put your bullets in these pouches that are upside down. And so then you can just flip the
pop the cap and the way they slide out,
and the bullets fall out, and then you can reload your revolver. And we have quick mag releases, and we have magazines, and we're just boom, we're popping 15 in again, and we're ready to go within a matter of seconds. And I don't know, and I when you say dump pouches or you say revolvers and stuff, I always think about, I grew up watching Chips, and you see those guys, they had revolvers, and that's what they were using. But at the same time, I remember seeing a video or photo, is either in a magazine or as a training that I had gone to or been part of. And it showed a picture of a police officer who had gotten into a shooting, but they took a photo of him, and he had died being shot. But his dump pouch his hand was down by his dump pouch, like holding the bullets that he was trying to roll into his hand, and his revolver was open, but he wasn't able to get to it in time. And that those matter of seconds, and that we don't realize are going to make the difference. And just that advancement that we don't have to worry about that now. And it still seems that when you're changing a magazine, it's taking forever to change that magazine and do it right. But everything advances, but we don't realize how easy or the benefit of that change is going to be, because it's hard to change.
Well, humans. it's like anything. It's all the ripple effect is, what are the unintended consequences and the intended consequences of this change? Let's just say, take all you young guys back. Let's go back to 1980. Jimmy Carter opens the border of the United States to Castro to send us 250,000 prisoners. The idea was we were going to get all these political prisoners. What Castro does is he releases everyone in his prisons and insane asylums and send us all these military trained criminals, who then start, in essence, in the United States, a race or an arms race. And it's an arms race of criminals. So where the average officer who was killed in the 1970s was killed with a 22, that was, and let's face it, humans are thin-skinned game, and a 22 is very dangerous. But when all of a sudden now we're facing 9s and 45s, that became the norm in criminality. At the same time, you had a new company, Caliber Press, come out with Street Survival around 1982, 81, 82. And those two events, ironically, you had suddenly an emphasis on officer safety that became a huge bestseller. I can remember when I guess it was 1981, we got our first copy at DPS, and my buddy and I sat down with it, and we started turning each chapter into a lesson plan. That was how great it was. The same time, we got to understand it. Every day I'm coming in, going over to the watch commander's office. There's no email. There's no nothing like that. We had something called a teletype in the watch commander's office. And then whenever a officer killed summary would come in, or an officer injured summary would come in, the watch commander would tear it off the teletype and put it over in the training bundle, which I'd go in every morning, pick up the training bundle, take it over, sort it out. Those are going to armory. Those are going to office and officer safety. This is going over to the commander for whatever was the topic might be that had come across the teletype. And that was essentially how the internet was in those days. It was a very broadcast thing. And I would sit down with my buddy, and we'd look at what had happened, what officers got killed. This is where the Buck Savage ideas came from. A commander pulls up at a Circle K, he exits his vehicle, and marked unit, full uniform, and never looks up from his hand. He had a handful of change. He's counting his change from the front door of his vehicle to the front door where he got gunned down by an armed robber. The witnesses said he never looked up. No situational awareness whatsoever. Man. And we thought, well, I'm reading about it. Why aren't we teaching this? Why aren't we teaching people? And that's why the very first Buck Savage was at the Circle K. But we made it humor. We could have done a tragic recreation, or I thought we'll just make it funny with some catchy phrase. And again, I'd studied learning. My very first mother-in-law was a professor of childhood development at Arizona State. And we had talked about human retention. Humor enhances retention and ideas and concept. We want to make that idea sticky. So that's what we did,
Right. Yeah. That's, you hear about those things, and you hear about these horrible things that happened, and people get gunned down and whatever. And then all these witnesses that come in and say, hey, this happened. He didn't even do that. And they're not, and the witnesses aren't necessarily trained police officers. They're regular people just going to the store, getting milk, or they're taking their kids to get a soda after, a ball game or something, whatever. And they're able to even see that he wasn't doing that. Our mind as police officers, our minds are so wrapped up in the world that we're living in, and the struggles that we're trying to do, as far as, okay, I've got to get my reports done. I've got to go over here and do this. And I got to, and I'm assuming he was going to go get a cup of coffee or something just to try to stay awake. And
right. The assumption was he was counting his change to buy whatever he was going to get in there,
Right.
And you're right. No doubt he was internally focused, condition white, whatever you want to call it, thinking about what he has to do, that what he's got going on. Maybe he's got something at home he's got to see to. Well, he never gets home. He doesn't even survive getting his cup of coffee,
Right. So you meet people who don't have a knowledge of police work or whatever, and then they ask you the question, well, how come you always sit at the back of the restaurant? How come you always have to be watching the door? Or why are you always, you seem like you don't want to talk to anybody when you're at a party or something like that. It has nothing to do with my antisocial behavior or whatever. My mind is just, I've had situational awareness drilled into my head from the very first day, maybe even before I became a police officer. And it's just it's almost a dichotomy,
Right. You're not a cop very long before your family notices that you're suddenly paying attention to everything going around you.
Right.
That's the whole thing. Like I said, I was so stuck when that very first field week, I'm 5 weeks into the academy, and this guy sees everything, and that was the thing. I'm like, Officer Shad, how did you see that? And his whole question was, why didn't you? You know what I mean?
Right.
Number one, he treated me like an adult, and number two, with high expectations. And that's something I've always believed that made him, that's why he was such a superb, training officer, this is the kind of guy he was,
Right. Yeah. And I had gone to a training with a group of other, not necessarily law enforcement, but there was I had our DA with us and one of our public defenders, a judge, some probation officers. It was for a national drug court conference that we had gone to, and we had gone to Washington D.C. and we were there, and when we were leaving, everybody had a different flight, and everybody had whoever made up the flights, they didn't get everybody on the same flight, and everybody was flying out of just 3 or 4 different airports around Washington D.C. And so some were going to this airport, some were going to that one. Well, me and the public defender, we were going we had the same flight. He had taken his wife with him to she decided to tag along, and so in the evenings after training they would go to dinner or do whatever, and then they would come back. So because not often you get to go to Washington D.C. I mean, it's cool, especially as a tourist. There's a lot of cool stuff. But so we were going back, and they had rented a car, and we were driving back, and they're like, and when you get into the airport, I think it was Reagan, you're looking at, okay, there's a bunch of signs that say you can go left, you can go over here, here's car return, I don't know. And he was trying to figure out. And I said, no, we got to go over here to go to the left, and take a right over there. And I was just following the signs. And so we got in, we got the car returned, and we were waiting in line at TSA. And he goes, I want to thank you for coming along. And I said, I didn't think anything of it. And he said, you're so attentive to what's going on. I said, I am. What are you talking about? I didn't even think about it. He goes, ever since I've known you, we've been on several, we'd gone to a couple different trainings. We'd gone to Houston, and we'd gone to Washington, and we'd gone to several different places in the state here. And he was like, every time we go somewhere, and everybody's trying to figure out, because there's a group trying to figure, hey, we can do this. Which if we're going to go do this, which way do we got to go? And and you would always come up with, we need to go here. It's like you are able to pick these things out before the rest of us and help make the decision and where we're needing to go before we need to go there. And I didn't even think about it, but he goes, it's got to be because of your profession. It's what you do, is you pay attention to what's going on. And so you can make a better decision based off of quicker decisions that a lot of other people, we don't think about. He goes, I'm a public defender. I'm a lawyer. I think about briefs, and I think about this. I don't think about physical decision making right now, even though you'd think a defense lawyer would want to do that so they can tear up somebody on the stand. But he's a good guy, and he hadn't thought about that, but he said it really was something that caught his attention, and how I did things that I did.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things you just said is exactly one of the things we used to teach in the academy. Always be in the now. While you're on the street, you got to be in the now. What's happening right now, not what you're going to be doing later, not what you did yesterday. That's really what Condition Yellow was about. An awareness that I'm in the now, right now. That's what you were doing. You're driving it. Reagan it's right there. It's, boom, you pull into it. It's almost always a mob scene.
Right.
I've flown in there so many times. And like you're saying, is that he noticed that you paid attention to what's going on now. Well, that's because you are in the now all the time. That's what a good cop is. You're attending to that.
Yeah. And you don't even think about it. You don't even realize it. And it wasn't something that I tried to do or whatever. It was just something that popped up, and so now I look at that in other people too, especially younger officers or whatever. And you try to say, okay, are you paying attention to this? Because everybody, they hear them talking about, oh yeah, we're getting ready to go on vacation. As soon as I'm done with this shift, we're heading to the airport, and I'm going to Mexico or whatever, and you have to, that's great. I know you're looking forward to your flight, and you're looking forward to your vacation. You got to work on this. You got to be right here, right now. This is important. And I think
exactly right.
Sometimes forget that. So
we do a lot, sometimes like you point out, it's imposed on. Hey, I'm going on vacation. I've been waiting for this vacation for 2 years. I'm going this and that. And the problem is that becomes a penetrating idea. And like you're saying, it's invisible to us sometimes. And we have to understand, look, right now, get back in the now, get back to what's going on around you, and actually, I think cops get pretty good at. We're pretty good at compartmentalizing. I think we're better than the average person. Otherwise, we couldn't cope with all the things we see.
That's true.
But boy, you're right. So sometimes we need that reminder. Get out of tomorrow. Get back in right now.
Yeah, especially, I mean, you can have that in your brain when you get to a place that you're going to be, I guess, your safe space, and I air quote safe space, right? You're back at the office, you're in the locker room, you're writing your report, and you can focus on it. Yeah, you got to think about it, but you can think, oh man, I can't wait. I'm just 4 more hours and I can be, as you're clicking away on
exactly right.
You're in your car, you're at a scene, you're dealing with some folks at a domestic, or whatever the case is. That has to be where you're at, and because you're going to have to make a decision. You can be making a split decision within a matter of seconds that you didn't even realize that was going to be something you have to think about.
Well, in this day and age of assaults, ambush style, in restaurants, multiple officers assailed and murdered in restaurants. We talk about these kind of things as tragedies, but we have to remember that these are tragedies that are against our profession, and we have to constantly learn from it. All right.
Yeah.
No longer is a restaurant considered a safe space,
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you used to be able to, and you can attest to this, I'm assuming, is you used to be able to go to a restaurant or go to a donut shop if you want to go off the stereotypes. And you knew that because they knew you, and they would say, oh, hey, how you doing? And they actually felt comfortable you being in there.
Right.
And now you get like those stories that came out of San Francisco last week or the week before last, where they kicked him out because we felt uncomfortable because you had a gun. Where does this come from? How do I don't know. I know there's a whole bunch of different political views, and everybody has their different mindset, but the police officer is not someone that is just out there willy-nilly shooting everybody because they can.
No, obviously no. And the mindset, as we all know, comes from this new bizarre anti-American, anti-masculine, anti-paternal, it's just anti-Western civilization is what it is. And you end up, you wonder what, and again, I read a great article a couple of weeks ago, and it said this could have only percolated in America's academic environments, because they're safe, they're sanctuary for stupid, and they can sit around and everything is esoteric. Everything. You ever notice these people don't speak in plain English? They have their own vernacular, which is exclusive. It denies you participation in the debate or the argument. Mm-hmm. And then further, to make sure that you're not allowed to debate or argue, they brand any heterodoxy as sinful or racist or misogynistic or you name whatever the issue is. They can throw a dozen pejoratives on you, and then suddenly you're canceled. Well, canceling it's like burning the witch at the stake, only this way you're just socially burned, you're not physically burned.
Right.
But you're a witch, away with you,
Yeah, you become that pariah.
Right, you're a pariah. And here the thing is that it totally misrepresents the professional law enforcement, totally misrepresents the contributions that law enforcement has made to our society throughout history. Mm-hmm. And what's worse is it's an assault not on police, but on literally Western civilization. And that's what, I've written about this extensively, and I do the back page of Police Magazine for the last, 16 years now, and, mm-hmm. and I write about these social issues. I used to be funny all the time. Now I kind of gave up being funny, and I'm on a mission, to educate, people. When they call you a fascist, they don't even know none of these people know what fascism even is. My degree is political science. And I'm telling you what, the cops aren't fascists. That's the thing is, not in our society. It's a constitutional republic. Mm-hmm. It's the people who want to undermine the Constitution are the fascists.
Right. And I think we forget there's a point where we are, we're only there because the citizens want us there. And we're only there and as long as they allow us to be there. But there's always going to be somebody that's going to have that mindset of okay, well, I want to make sure it's safe for my kids to be here. I want to be safe for my family to be able to sleep at night or whatever. I want to live in a nice neighborhood. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to make sure. And you can go back in time to the militiamen or to just your neighborhood watch guys or your the groups that would just go and take care of their tribes or their villages or their neighborhoods or their cities. And so it just comes down to a thing where a city or a county or a whatever is responsible for making sure they have a safe place for their citizens to be, and
Well, let's go back to Peel's laws, right? Or Peel, so Robert Peel, everybody loves to quote that. And I say, you're out of you're presenting it out of, he wasn't the chief of police. He was the prime minister twice of England. And he wrote those principles because it was for the people, not for when he says the people are the police are the people, he's advising the public that they are part of that constabulary. They are part of the peace. They are part of the enforcement of the law. It wasn't meant to make sure you have community-oriented policing programs. It meant to be the community should be policing. And this is the whole thing, is that I hear so much misrepresentation today about what our history, our tradition is, yes, there was a Bull Connor, but for every Bull Connor, there were hundreds of cops, hundreds of thousands of cops back then that enforced the laws equitably and without the filter of race. And now they want everything to have the filter of race, which misrepresents our society completely. For me, it's all very frustrating. I'm 69 years old, and I got to tell you what, I have never seen a society more self-destructive and self-flagellating. And I got to just say this. The Rorschach test is how somebody feels about cops. That's literally, I can tell you right now what they believe just by what they think about cops. And that's the whole problem. Were they raised that, hey, if you're lost, find a policeman, or were they raised that, hey, try to avoid the cops? And this has all become ridiculous, and it's all extrapolating into more and more violence, more and more disobedience. We're trying to get people to say, understand, if you don't agree with your arrest, comply, then complain. And more and more we see this resistance. It's just unhealthy. It's a bad symptom,
Yeah. And I'm seeing that more and more. I work, I don't say every night because I do get a day off every once in a while, but I work, and I'm seeing that more and more, just more people are just arguing the fact of, sorry, hey, you're under arrest. No, I'm not. And you're almost taken aback because you got to sit there and say, you can't say, oh, you're right, I'm sorry, I must be mistaken.
Silly me.
Yeah. And so there's a lot of that, whether it's just verbal or there's physical resisting, and there's all these different things. And then to the point where they're shooting now because, no, I don't want to be arrested and I've got other things to do. You've done something. And I don't know a single police officer that goes out and just grabs any random person off the street and says, you're arrested, let's go.
Because we all know we have liabilities up the yin yang, civil liabilities, criminal liabilities. Right. We have all those. We're all trained in that even in those ancient days of revolvers and no portable radios. We taught constitutional law. And we all worried about being sued. We all worried about that. And this, yeah. And I'm just going to say this. Part of law enforcement's problem is that our leadership has no institutional memory, or at least won't stand up for it. And that's the whole problem. These chiefs and sheriffs that act like we've never done community. 1975, we're doing something called team policing, which is community-oriented policing, where we're supposed to be the total police officer. You park your car, you walk into your businesses, you meet everybody, you walk your neighborhoods. You were put in a team, and you always work the same beat, so you would know your community. We took the Barrio Oeste on the west side, and we put a shop down there, a storefront. We put all these guys in blazers, so it was less intimidating. They were all Spanish speakers. We tried every kind of outreach. That's 1975. Okay.
Right.
Now they act as if we haven't done anything. Well, look, no. And when I was the director of education for the Law Enforcement Television Network in Dallas, I remember interviewing the first head of the cops program under Clinton, Chief Brand. And they were there. He's there in Fort Worth because they had a midnight pool hall open for the the underprivileged kids to be off the streets, and all this. And it's like, okay, when do we learn that we can't solve society's problems? But the problem is our leadership, instead of saying, we've tried this, we've tried that, they always say, well, you're right, we just need to do something. And they throw everyone under the bus. They throw the whole profession under the bus. Like, you're right, we've just been out shooting unarmed people and doing this. Right. This is all malarkey. We haven't been. Right. And we don't.
Yeah. I knew a guy, he's retired now, but he was a, I guess he was a mentor of mine. And one of the things I remember him saying is somebody was saying, you need to just go in there and arrest him. They put their hands on me. It was a domestic we were at or whatever. And he goes, well, I can't, there's no mandatory arrest on this, but his story says something different. Well, I just want you to arrest him. Well, did he actually hit you? Well, no, but this is what happened. And there's no basis for anything. And he goes, but I want you to just go in there and kick the door in and arrest him. He said, well, I can't just go in the house for nothing, And, he said, well, you just need to go do it. And so he goes, look, so there's this thing. And there's this thing, it's called the Constitution. If I could just trim a little fat off the edge right here, I'd be able to go do what you want. But I can't just go trimming anything off the Constitution that protects somebody's house, them in their house, Yeah, everybody thinks that we boot doors and we pull people out of their bed, innocent people who were just getting ready for work to go feed the hungry and, all these different things. We don't do that. And I would say 99% of the things that we do are drug related. And so something was happening drug related. I almost guarantee it. There's that small percentage that it's financial or whatever, that drugs aren't involved. Maybe, I don't know, but for the most part. And so there's always some kind of underlying something else that you can say, well, this crime was happening because of XYZ, drugs or money or sex or whatever. And then everybody says, well, either on the one hand, you need to just go get those people, or on the other hand, they're not really doing anything really that bad, but it's a crime. The people decided that this thing is going to be a crime. And so now we have to have somebody go, pull these people and take them before a judge. And that's what we're doing with an arrest. We're taking you to a place so then you can be brought before a judge and then have your day in court. And I don't think people realize that. They think that it's the police. Police are just these jackbooted thugs who are trying to boot doors all the time.
Well, exactly right. And this constant analogy of us to, you guys are fascist. You guys are this. You guys are that. And it's like, wait, no. Number one, we're not the Gestapo. Although sometimes some of our agencies at the federal level act that way. Part of the problem, you're bringing up so many issues here. Let me just say this. You used to have a hard time making some of those arguments when kids actually studied history, when they knew the history, they knew the relative nature between fascism and democracy and capitalism and socialism. And, and these are things that we used to teach our children that were critically important to understanding. Being free has you got to have a quantum level of education, because free is hard. Where being a slave is easy. You just, do it sucks. We don't want to be serfs, and that's the thing is we got to go back and educate always. But again, our leadership has to advocate for us as well,
Right. And I think we do a poor job of making sure that kids know that the police aren't a bad job. Not to say that we haven't gone into schools and we don't have our school resource officers going in schools and talking with kids. Personally, I've gone into schools and I've read at library days or Dr. Seuss week or whatever the case is, at whatever elementary school. And I've gone and you read to kindergartners and first graders and stuff, but there's a point where we stop. And I know that, you bring things up like, hey, how about middle schools and high schools? And they say, oh, well, they're not receptive. They don't care about that. They don't want to talk to cops because they're already being groomed. I guess groomed is the word, by parents,
yes,
society,
by teachers,
to say, hey, don't talk to the police officers, and they're just there to get you in trouble. And so you go into a house where you see a kid on the street, or you walk into a restaurant and you say, and people say, oh, he did it, or they did it, or you better be good, or he'll come and arrest you, to a little kid.
Right.
And that is the most detrimental thing that we can do to our children, not just to us, but to our children, because they're going to grow up now thinking, okay, every time I see a cop, I'm gonna get in trouble, or I'm gonna get arrested, or whatever.
Right.
Now, but I mean, there's a point where we're driving in our car, we see a trooper on the side of the road or whatever. Yeah, we slow down. Our heart starts beating a little bit, and we look.
Hey,
at
other troopers slow down.
Yeah,
they see another
cops.
trooper. I'm just
Cops do it all the time.
Do.
Yeah, but I don't. If I'm sitting in a restaurant and I see a police officer walk into the restaurant because he needs to get a burger because he's on lunch, I'm not in fear, like, oh great, he's coming to get me, because I don't do stuff. Now there are people that do stuff they shouldn't do, and those are the ones who hate the police or don't want to have anything to do with the police. But I think we're doing a disservice to our kids and our future generations by saying things like, watch out, he's going to arrest you, or whatever the case may be. But,
well, it's, God, I tell you one thing, our conversation has gone all over the board and fired so many hot buttons inside my brain here. But I just want to say, the thing is that I hope everybody understands, we have the best law enforcement in the world. We're at a level today where our training surpasses anything ever in the past.
mm-hmm.
We don't have dump pouches anymore. In fact, we went to speed loaders to automatics. Now we have these auto loaders that are phenomenal. We carry more bullets in our gun and magazine right off the bat than we carried on our whole body in those days. And we train better. We do so much better. We have so much better equipment. We have body armor, and we do, I wish America would wake up and realize that we are the envy of the world still to this day. And it's because of law enforcement officers keeping the peace. It's our society's, it's a remarkable experiment in human dignity. And again, no society on earth has ever brought so many cultures, so many races together and done so well up until this point. And, we've never really had a rebellion. We've had a civil war over secession, but because we've always trusted our elections and we trusted our authorities and we've trusted, now that trust is going away.
Mm-hmm.
And I really worry about the future, but I appreciate you bringing these things up, because I want everybody thinking about it. Now you got me all fired up. I probably won't sleep tonight now.
Oh, great. Sorry about that. Okay. So let's go back then, before I get your blood boiling too much, and let's go back to the 80s, and you're making the videos, and you said you did that for about 3 years, and that you made,
right.
And
then I went, yeah.
Oh,
well, I went with Caliber Press. I did street survivals. It was tough because I would be teaching in the academy all week and then fly out and do a street survival and then come back and teach in the academy, in the 80s, because street survival had become so huge back then. Finally in 86, I just focused on the academy,
Mm-hmm.
and then went into narcotics as a sergeant in Tucson, down in metropolitan area team narcotic. It's a metropolitan area narcotics team interdiction, Mantis interdiction squad. It was a joint squad, and that was a great adventure. Then I made lieutenant, and then LETN started in 1990, and I left DPS to become the director of education for the Law Enforcement Television Network, and that was too bad nobody today knows that. It was a huge satellite distributed training. We had a 250,000 cops subscribing, 3,000 agencies
Mm-hmm.
throughout the United States and Canada. It was just and it was a chance for me. I'd got to go out and interview, super trainers all over the country, everywhere, from
cool.
Oregon to Florida,
Mm-hmm.
it was just from California to Maine. Wherever there was good training, I went and got to do shows on it. I've been beat up by guys in so many different ways, man. Ground fighting guys. I couldn't walk off. Got knocked out by Gary Klugowitz in Wisconsin just to show me his new punch technique. When I come to, I'm flat on my back, and he goes, big stud. He's like, yeah, was that pretty good, huh? I go, when I come to it completely, I'll give you some feedback.
Right. Yeah.
But man, boy. But
After
no,
my brain
it's been
stops
great.
swelling, we'll get back to it.
Exactly right.
Yeah. And so you become lieutenant into the 90s, and then did you retire about that time?
Yeah. At that time, I retired and became I went to LATN in Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
And again, here's the thing, it was a brand new job. Nobody in the world ever had a job like that. And there's never been one since. LATN came and went by 2008. I guess it was extinct because the internet came along, killed the satellite business, and you adapt or die.
Sure.
But again, I got to do things. I was at Waco the day after.
Oh wow.
And ATF let me right into headquarters there at the airport where they had command post.
Mm-hmm.
And I was interviewing the guys who'd been in the initial assault, where they'd had the 4 agents killed.
Right.
And I'm hearing stuff. Well, the FBI arrived and threw us out, made us go back with the press corps, where ATF was one of our clients. They knew who I was. They knew that our training was totally oriented toward,
And you're talking to the Branch Davidian complex down in Waco.
Right.
Okay.
The Waco, the Branch Davidian crisis, 51 days of weirdness there, boy. But
92, 93.
Oh, you know what? God,
I was in high school.
I think it was 92. I think you're
right.
I
was in high school when that happened.
I've been through so many things. I tell you what, we did. God, I tell you what, it was a great adventure. We did after the Murrow building bombing in Oklahoma City. We did the year anniversary show live in our studios there in Dallas, which was again only 2.5 hours away from Oklahoma City. And we had the chief police, the fire chief. We had the feds in there. We had all these guys, and I'll never forget. I'm walking into the studio. I look over, and the guy who's the technical director for the show we had a full. It was a real network. Actually, there were 20 networks, everything from health sciences to law, legal advice network, and all that. And I walked by, and a guy. Well, his mom had been the last body recovered from the Social Security office, and I realized he didn't know what he's getting ready for. So I go in and talk to him and say, hey, man, you know what this show is, I don't want you to be blindsided, and this is, all these things were such powerful events in our history. I don't know America is taught any of this anymore. Yeah. And law enforcement was there. We're dead smack in the middle of it. Law enforcement was the key components of it, And I saw all these things happening. I got to be in part of it, interview, interrogate. On 9/11, our fire and emergency television network was, at the Pentagon when the plane flew into it. They were the only news crew in there,
Wow.
And these are the kind of things that I got to do that I wouldn't have been able to do if I'd have stayed in Arizona.
Sure,
I would never have a career, that I've had, And again, I have to say, I have been right there in my generation. We've seen law enforcement truly head toward that profession that we all kept talking about in the 70s. Or when are we going to be a profession? Now they deny us that, they denigrate us. And I think it's a terrible mistake, because we are simply the best law enforcement in the world. And don't tell me about some authoritarian Gestapo or, Stasi, those aren't law enforcement. Those are government oppressors,
Right. And so in the 70s, police weren't thought of as professionals. They were thought of just a job. Is that?
Yeah. We were blue collar, same as a
plumber or whatever.
Yeah, same. Right. Yeah. I mean, it was a job, and we kept saying, when will we be a profession? Everybody kept saying by 2000. Well, now I saw somebody the other day said, who was it that said that? 2050. And I'm like, God, 2050. Well, that would be 80 years since we talked about being a profession, and I don't believe that, And again, when do you decide you're a profession? What's your own self-esteem? What do you believe in?
Yeah. I remember telling my kids, because I had heard this at some point, and I said, if you wear a name tag, if you're a professional, if your last name is on your name tag, if your first name is on your name tag, you have a job. and so my son took that to heart, and he joined the military. making sure his last name was on his
That's
name tag.
Dang right.
So
Excellent.
he goes, I want to be professional. And so I was like, cool, good for you, buddy. But
Exactly.
and so, I can joke that way and you can, but I mean, I think my son really took that in because he was really looking at a lot of stuff, because he worked at, at pizza places where you have his first name on a name tag or whatever. And he'd done jobs where he had his first name and he realized, okay, I wash dishes and my hands hurt. That's a job. I don't like my job, but we don't think of this as a profession, or at least I do. And I know a lot of people I work with do, and people I meet that do this job also. But you also will talk to people, and it's kind of funny. I'm going to tell a little story. I went to New York to go visit my daughter, and we go to this pizza place, and this little hole in the wall pizza place, and they had police patches from all over the country inside this place. And it's honestly some of the best pizza I've ever had in my life. But we go in there, and we're waiting for our food, and this cop walks in, and he goes, I'll take two. He's super New Yorky, and they're like, you want two? He goes, yeah, two, huh? So they get him his pieces and stuff like that. Well, so while he's waiting for his pizza, I'm like, hey, how you doing? I'm a police officer too. And he goes, oh, you're on the job, huh? His whole, that's they call it being on the job.
On the job, right? That's what my wife calls it too. Chicago suburbs,
right? It's got to be kind of from the Midwest.
I think about the Mississippi, Mississippi East, because I'd never heard of it till I went to LETN, Law Enforcement Television Network, actually.
Yeah. So now I've talked to people, and they're like, if you're working, if you're a cop, you're a cop. But if you are working, you're on the job. If you're retired, oh, you're retired. But you're currently working, oh, you're on the job still. So yeah, I'm on the job. So we call it being on the job, but we think of ourselves as professionals. So it's kind of funny.
Well, that's the thing. I believe, professionalism comes from inside of us. And I think you're right. If we just need to, when anybody brings that up, say, yeah, well, I am a professional, and that's it.
Yeah. I'll try to be professional with you, and I'll try to do everything I can to be, upstanding and, honorable in what I'm doing. But so you start doing that. And then there's a point where obviously you said 2008, whatever, when the internet comes and starts destroying everybody that's trying to do satellite work. And you obviously say, I'm not done living. I still have to do some stuff. And so had you met your wife at this point?
Oh yeah. Let's go back here. She had first attended a street survival back in the 80s and then saw me, but I had not met her. And then over the years, as I said, I was director of education for LETN. And then in 98, 97, LETN bought Caliber Press, Street Survival. Dennis Anderson and Chuck Remsburg from Caliber Press came to us and said, hey, we want to retire. We want to sell it. So I went to New York, did a presentation for the mothership there, Prime Media, and they bought Caliber Press. And then in 98, I moved up there to run it, and still doing LETN stuff and Caliber stuff, running it. We still had other instructors. I wasn't teaching on the road with Caliber. I was just running it now. And we had, and then I had started dating my wife. And then in 2001, we got married. What happened was eventually they closed up the shops in Illinois for street survival, moved it to Dallas. And then 9/11 happened. And that's when I decided to get out of the office and just become an instructor, going back on the street, teaching street survival. Excuse me. So, I ended up moving to Chicago, where my wife was still an active sergeant, and she had shows on LETN. I had shows at the same time. We were busy doing all kinds of stuff. And again, it was great because we got married in 2001. We continued doing all of our training, street survival stuff. You may have seen my wife did a reality show called Female Forces. And those are all Napervillian ladies. She was the princess in that one, and 2009, she retired. And then I think it was 2010, we separated from Caliber Press. or 2012. I don't know. I'm old, so
It all
don't
starts
ask me a lot of
meshing
questions.
together.
It's I got. Well, that's the thing. All the time I'm doing hundreds of seminars, and I'm doing stuff. Police One. I started the video unit for Police One, and I did hundreds of roll call reality trainings where we dissect shootings. I don't know. You may have seen some of them. Yeah,
Oh, sure.
but,
Yeah. I get Police One emails, twice a day or something. And
right.
I always look for the video side. Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. I thought, and it's ironic. I've done, 40 years of seminars all over the United States, but a single video, 6 minutes long, I reached vastly more people. It's just amazing with the internet. I'm able to do that roll call reality training. And that's just, to me, it amazes me. And that's the kind of thing, like right now, your reach, we're just beginning to understand the effects of things like podcasts and that ability to reach people in our profession throughout the world, actually.
Right. Yeah. And it's amazing because you don't even think about, and I've said this before on the podcast, is that pebble that we drop in a pond, the ripples that it makes, and where those go so far, those go all the way to the other edge of the pond or the lake, right, or the whatever and they may not look like that ripple is really going to make a difference. However, it may add to this giant wave that is going to push somebody to go be something more, be something better. But like you said, those ripples are going to be something. So that little pebble that you drop in has right, a profound effect on everything else we do.
Yes. And you know what, that's the thing. Like every podcast you do, you have an intended consequence you hope comes from it, but you don't even know all the other benefits that may accrue from those effects that you do today, and that's the good thing about it,
Yeah. I don't even, my hope is with this show is just to motivate people, inspire people, and try to have a positive outlook. And we have so much negativity, whether it's police officers or first responders in general, teachers and nurses or whatever. But if I can make it positive and I can put that out there for people to see that, that's my intent. Now, there's some people that say, hey, I really like this. It helped. It provided me some kind of knowledge or a way to do something else. And I thought, hey, great, cool, good for you. That was an unintended consequence, but it happened and it was good. So if I can do that, that's my hope and my intent. So,
well, see, that's the thing, when you talk about what is a hero, a hero is someone that takes a quest, right, it may be thrust on them or you choose it yourself, but you've got your quest and you're doing it. And that's the thing, is that our life, I want everyone to live their life in a heroic fashion. Pick a quest, right, and go and follow it, and you make changes. That's how you get positive changes in the world, like you're doing. Look, nobody pinned you down. This is all self-selective path you follow, sure. And that's the kind of thing. If you got a gift of communication, use it, whatever your gifts are. And if you don't have a gift, create one. Right. Too many people, that's what I mean about that obstacle is the way. I wish I could. I really feel bad for that author because he's really a great writer. But that's the thing, is people, I don't communicate well. Well, you know what? I didn't. I was so embarrassed in third grade. We had to get up and give a speech in front of the class. I was so humiliated that I swore I was going to be able to do better. And I would sit there and I would read the newspaper in the mirror. I would do these things to try to be a better communicator, and then in college, I got a radio show, and these are the kind of things, I became a really good orator because I wasn't a good communicator.
Right. And I can only imagine, if somebody were to listen to my first episode and maybe this episode or the next 40 episodes somewhere down the line, I might be a more eloquent speaker than I am now. I hear myself speak or whatever, and I start saying, you be your worst critic. And you're like, well, you need to stop doing that. Or whatever the case.
I'll be honest, I still hate seeing me on video. So, and I've been doing it decades now, but I always look and I say, oh, why'd I make that face? Why did I say it that way?
Right.
What an idiot. Because right. I am my worst critic by far.
Yeah. And so now you are doing a thing called the winning mind. Is that correct?
Right. It's something I developed for the cadets back and started talking about in 1980. I've always been into, I coached 2 years of high school wrestling, my senior year of college, during school, and then my rookie year, I had a job as the freshman coach at a little Catholic school here in town. Yeah, it's a great side cash. To coach in Arizona, you only have to have a substitute teaching certificate. Well, that was easy enough to get, and so that I coached, and it was great because back then $1,000 was a lot of money.
Sure, yeah.
And so God, they paid me. I had a ball coaching, and the thing was, I loved sports psychology, and if I wasn't going to be a cop, I was probably going to go into coaching, because I did love that stuff. And it was kind of a hobby of mine, and I would study it and read it. And that's the whole thing. Back when I took sports psychology, in fact, I'm so old, it was called coaching theory. It's a little branch of cognitive psychology. And I'm not a fan of psychology. I think a lot of it's junk science. But cognitive psychology, I can measure how well you do from day 1 to day 10 in doing repetitions or mental repetitions. I mean, that's the beauty of cognitive psychology. You've got a tangible metric every time. You can say, okay, this person learned this, the people who believe this do this better,
Right.
And so that's one of the things I started pushing mental aspects of performance to all my cadets, started doing classes on it. And then eventually the winning mind, it became my focus was that proper mindset for dealing with critical incidents, the proper mindset for learning. And honestly, I've had so many people who are reservists, or bank presidents, and they come up and say, God, I wish you could talk to all my employees at the bank here, because everything you just told us today would make my employees better. And that's the thing. It's all positive psychology. It's all, learned helplessness stuff, learned optimism is what I believe in, Seligman stuff and all that. But there's so many, sports psychology today is so advanced, but they don't, it seems like nobody teaches it anymore. They just too much time worrying about politically correct issues,
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. I know that your seminars, whatever, they can go day long, 2-day long, whatever, and you can go into.
There we go. See, I knew that was coming.
Yeah, we talked about it.
I told you.
Yeah,
all right, go ahead.
Okay. And so I know that those classes and stuff can go longer, and so you talk about just the winning mind, and I can talk to, and you just summed it up in like, a minute or two or something like that. But there's so much more to it. And I think that you sell yourself short by saying, oh, it's just thinking like this. And I've been to one of your seminars, and it was captivating, because you sit there and you explain it with one, your history and your knowledge and the things that and your base, the person who is Dave Smith, and then who is Buck Savage, and then who is all these things. But then you also talk about how to make the officer better, or the person in general better, based off of how you think about things, whether it's, okay, I need to make sure that I set myself up to win in the first place, whether it's physically or whatever. I have to prepare myself to do this the better way. And I think it's really it's such a benefit to the police world, but the human world in general.
Well, that's the whole thing. I really believe that, mind, we're in the golden era of positive mental training, and everybody's spending so much time on the negative. But I one of the things I really want cops to learn is, look, believe in yourself, believe in your mission. You are an essential element, and that's why I keep saying this. A free society, you've got to have cops. I want you to have a lot of self-esteem about what you do. Like you said earlier, we talked about the profession. I agree with you. You were doing a point of positive mental affirmation when you say, I think I am a profession. Yes. And that's how you become a profession. You decide to be a profession. Right. And that's the whole thing. One of the things I talk about is how we make human errors and how to overcome them. But we're still going to make errors. The question is, you're going to forgive yourself and move on, or be in a morass all your time. There's just so much to think about.
That's the hard part, especially if, like we were talking about, being our own worst critic. you do something, you screw up or you mess up or you fail or whatever the case is, because you're human. And then you can't let it go. And you hold this, it's like you wear a 50-pound cape now, wherever you go.
Yeah, the mark of Cain. Now you're just totally marked for your whole life. Boy, yeah. But see, here we have a society where we're going into an NFL coach's personal emails from 11 years ago and firing him. And he says, well, I was just mad right then. I'm sorry. Well, there is no grace. There's no forgiveness in our society.
Right.
Burn the witch,
Right.
And that's not healthy for a society. And it has an odd Soviet feel to it, frankly. I'm not crazy about,
Yeah. Well, there's that side of it where we're young, we grow, we change. Everybody's different. And
right.
Then you become older. And you're like, oh my gosh, because you can even look at yourself back when you were 19 or if you're older, whatever. And you say, holy cow, I was an idiot. I was stupid. I can't believe I said that. If I can just get that moment.
Forget 19, me. Go back to 39. I'm like, oh
sure.
God, I wish I had that again.
Sure. Sure. Somebody says, how you doing? Anything I can do for you? Yeah. Can you get that time machine finished so I can go back and fix something?
Get that back. Let me tell myself some things.
Yeah. Hey, I just want to tell myself this one thing. Hey, don't say that word in the story, whatever.
Exactly. And those are the little that talk about, it didn't turn out to be a pebble. It turned out to be a giant stone in that pond, Exactly. Right.
And you're like, oh, now that thing is forever haunting you. And there's people that forget about it, but you still remember that. And you think back, something reminds you of it. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my gosh, I'm an idiot. And you feel bad about
it. I know
it. But Dave, I'm nothing but pleased to and honored to have you on here. And our talk has been fantastic. I know you're short on time, and but I do want to thank you. You have been a de facto mentor, whether it's on video or whatever. And I'm incredibly honored to have you on, and it's been nothing but a joy to have you here.
Well, Ken, thank you for inviting me, and you keep up the good work, man. We're going to create that profession if we just nag enough people. I guarantee you, man.
Absolutely. Where can people find you if they wanted to get a hold of you, or they wanted to hear about
you?
Easy.
Yeah, just go to bucksavage.com or jdbucksavage.com. And it's got my emails there. It's got everything. Easy to get a hold of me that way. I made it an easy mnemonic. The Buck Savage, I got both of them, bucksavage.com and jdbucksavage.com.
Oh, that's cool. And you got a ton of videos on YouTube, and everybody else can find you there.
Go to Police One, see all my training too. And I got articles everywhere. I know.
Yeah. Right? All you got to do is either type in your name, or JD Buck Savage, and that'll pop up a litany of, if you Google it, a litany of different stuff on you. So like I said, it's been an honor having you on. If you could say one more thing to anybody, if you leave them with something, what would you leave people with?
Oh man, just believe in what you do. Have a great time in life, live the adventure, and always stay safe.
Perfect. So I want to thank all of our firefighters, our teachers, our nurses out there, our EMTs, you guys that do stuff for everybody to make sure we're safe, our veterans who are making sure our country is with the country that it is, and our police officers, our law enforcement officers, you guys, that's from your municipal guys all the way up to some of our federal guys. I appreciate you guys making sure that we can sleep safe and have the country that we have, the society, the communities that we have. And so without you guys, we wouldn't be able to do it. So for me, if you want to get a hold of me, you can get a hold of me on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. You can go to the website, which is the What's a Hero podcast.buzzsprout.com. You got all of our prior episodes, plus a link to the platforms of all your favorite podcast platforms that you can download the episodes from and all the other words that are kind of skipping my mind right now. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. And Dave Smith, JD Buck Savage, like I said, it's been an honor. I appreciate you being on. And so for Dave Smith, I've been Ken Frownfelter, and this has been the What's a Hero podcast. We are clear.